Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and others. I'm going to continue my sort of then and now series by taking a look at Stoke Bruerne and Blisworth. So, if you assume that there is nothing terribly interesting between Cosgrove and Stoke Bruerne on the way north, that's not actually totally true, but there's certainly not very many interesting photographs. Then this is the continuation of the last video from Cosgrove. Stoke Bruerne is a very, very well-known canal hub with a lovely museum and, a coffee shop and so on. And consequently, there are millions and millions of photographs of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to concentrate on the slightly unusual stuff, the stuff you might not find at first glance on the website and so on. So please do go and check out the Waterways Museum and find out all about Sister Mary Ward, who nursed the boaters despite not actually being a sister or indeed having any medical qualifications at all. But nevertheless, she did an awful lot of good. But all that sort of stuff, go and find that out from the CRT itself. It's really interesting. What we're going to do is we're going to look at some of the more obscure photographs. Now, here I am at Stoke Bruerne Bottom Lock. And if we turn around here, we can see a building. And this building looks sort of a mixture of, not that old, but in fact, it is surprisingly old. It is a pump house, a pumping house, and it's here to pump water from the bottom up to the top of the locks. One of the things about Stoke Bruerne at the bottom is that the River Tove flows in there and flows out on the other side in a relatively short distance, which means that this area in winter is extremely prone to flooding. And you can see that right here. So you might think you can see the side of the canal, but if you have a look in the canal, you can see some little mushrooms poking their heads out, and that's because when it is at a sensible level, the water steps down, the wharf steps down, and the wharf actually ends a little bit inwards of those bollards. You can see it better if I point the camera down from where I'm standing. You can see some bollards that are apparently in the water. And I don't know how well you can see, but you might be able to see that there is a whole lock wing here that is underwater. All absolutely normal and natural and part of the ebb and flow of the seasons here. So this is something we're going to see in a few old photographs. We're going to see this bridge that I'm walking over in some old photographs. We're going to see this lock. We might even catch a glimpse of these original canal cottages. This being stop number 1 on our journey up through Stoke Bruerne and towards Blisworth. Let's go and make a start. Okay, here we are at the second stop of our day at Stoke Bruerne lock number 2, the one just before the top lock, which is over there. In the distance, just beyond the boat which is coming, you might be able to see the entrance to the old brickfield arm. That went to a brickworks, and that was filled in long before photography was really a thing. So what we're looking for in our photographs today is we're looking for this bridge with its 2 arches and the navigation in. The bridge with the 2 arches is because there used to be a double set of locks all the way down here. So you can see a big wide green on that side. There was another lock there, and there was another lock straight ahead of us. In fact, what happened was they built the first set of locks, then they doubled them up, and then only 30 years later, again before photography was a thing, they filled in one of the sets of locks. The locks they filled in were the original ones. So to that extent, what is here is not absolutely original. There are lots and lots and lots of photographs of this section going up towards what is now the museum. and I shall show you only a tiny proportion of them. What I will tell you about is the lock that you can see directly ahead of us through the now disused arch. Unlike all of the other locks, the lock on the right hand side is the original, the lock on the left hand side is the new one, and the original has survived where the new one has not. It is worth saying there are not very many photographs in the sort of early 1900s showing the disused lock, and that's because it was more or less filled in. I mean, it was just sort of full of rubble and nonsense, and had grass growing in it and all sorts of stuff, so not terribly interesting to photograph. It doesn't look like that now. It appears to have a set of narrow lock gates on it, which are absolutely not original. I think they're from the Gloucester and Sharpness Canal. But, this is a museum, so they've got interesting things to see, including stuff which they've set up in a non-original fashion. Inside the lock chamber, there is a boat, and there is also the remains of the footings for a boat weighing machine. Again, totally non-original, put there in the 1960s, and now taken away to another museum somewhere else. And what is in the lock now is an old working boat in a somewhat parlous state. So this is very interesting. It's very interesting to walk into the wing walls of a lock, but one should be aware that this line here, which shows that the brickwork is not in any way attached to the wall, that's because this brickwork is much more modern. It's only about 50 or so years old, and it's there to sort of give an idea of what a narrow lock might have looked like. It's not in any way the original. Let's carry on walking up to the position of some of our other photographs. As I say, there are loads of photographs this way. Some of the photographs you're going to see has got a chimney in the background, and indeed a chimney being knocked down. And that's because if you have a look over there, beyond the flagpole, you can see a working boat. It's called Sculptor. And where Sculptor is now, there was an entrance to a dock for a mill. The mill is now the museum. You can see the sign above it. And the chimney was knocked down in 1913, 1914. I think there are some photographs of it, which I shall show you in a minute. And the dock was filled in using rubble from the chimney. All a very, very long time ago. Let's walk up and see what it looks like from the other side. Okay, here we are walking down past Sculptor, and we can have a look back across the approach to the top lock. You can see in the distance on the right hand side the old entrance to the now filled in top lock, and if we walk down a little bit further you can see the actual top lock. There are lots of excellent photographs from this area, and this area is extraordinarily little changed. I mean, you've got a new buildings here, and you've got a lack of a basin here where there once was. That iron arch is not anything to do with this canal. It's part of the Ponxetti aqueduct, but nevertheless it's interesting. And I've got various photographs, I think possibly even a couple showing boats where they've been over optimistic with the loading, yeah, it sank. This boat Sculptor is quite interesting. It's one of the very, very last working boats built. It was built in the 1935. It was used, amongst other things, as a maintenance boat up until the mid-80s by British Waterways, as was, and is now a sort of museum piece. She is a composite boat, which is quite unusual. So she has iron sides and a wooden bottom, and long may she remain being loved and looked after. So here we are at the top lock. I'm not going to walk up to the next place, the Blisworth Tunnel, at this end. I will do the Blisworth tunnel at the other end because there's some better photographs of it. So here we are at Stoke Bruerne, and let's go and have a look at some photographs of what it used to be like. Alright, here is our next spot. This is actually, you may recognise this if you watch all my videos, from where I did a video asking for help about the Llangollen Canal situation at Whitchurch. However, we are here today for a more cheerful and a nicer reason, because we are walking down from the level of the ground, which is significantly higher than the canal, down to where the canal exits from Blisworth Tunnel. This is in the village of Blisworth, and we're going to walk up in a minute and have a look at Blisworth. But before we do, let's go and have a look at what the tunnel entrance looks like now in 2026. There it is. We're going to have a closer look, and then we'll pop up towards Blisworth. Now, the photographs of Blisworth are less numerous than the photographs at Stoke Bruerne. It is less famous, but it is no less impressive. You won't, I don't think I've got any photographs of this, but one thing you can see is that there's a feeder into the canal from the runoff from the fields. One thing you can see is that the runoff from the fields is significantly polluted, but it is nevertheless topping up the canal. Now, if we turn left and go and have a look at the tunnel entrance, obviously we can't see through the tunnel, although it is dead straight. If we were bang in the middle of the canal, you can actually see the end. But one thing you can see on our left is a building. And again, it looks like a modern building, mostly because it has a modern roof on it, but it is not. This is a tunnel hut, and this is a place, albeit sadly somewhat vandalised, where the leggers of the tunnel used to hang out. So when you take a boat through a tunnel like that and it's horse-drawn, you obviously can't take a horse through, there's no tow path, so you lie on the front of the boat and you push it through with your legs, which, given that this is 3,000 and something yards long, is quite the undertaking. Nevertheless, that is what they used to do. And so there's a hut here for the leggers, who are paid per boat that they push through. Fabulously dangerous job. The horses were taken up and over the hill, and on the other side, we didn't see it, but there was in fact a blacksmith's hut, so the horses would get there significantly faster than the boats would. So a blacksmith's hut on the other side was exactly the right place to have the horse reshoed if you wanted to. Okay, well, that is Blisworth Tunnel. So let's have some photos, and I shall walk up towards Blisworth, our final stop of this video. Okay, here we are at the last stop on our little walk through Stoke Bruerne and Blisworth. And we have come to look at an extremely nondescript looking bridge. This is the bridge over Station Road. And as you can see, it has a concrete span and definitely sort of 1930s looking brickwork. And you might say, well, why are we here to look at this extremely ordinary looking bridge? Well, because something interesting happened here in the 1920s, and it has been extensively photographed. And also because just beyond that working boat you can see ahead is Gayton Junction, which means that we have now covered everywhere from South Milton Keynes all the way up to Gayton Junction, which is quite cool. But back to the bridge. This, in the 1920s, was starting to fall down. I'm going to put up some photographs of cracks and of the buttresses failing. In fact, if we go and have a look, we can see here the original wing walls of the bridge, but the bridge itself is largely new. Now, the reason for this is, as I say, it was cracking and falling down, and you'll see some photographs of that, but then it was helped on its way by a motor car accident. And there are some cracking photographs of the motor car accident and indeed the car afterwards. I understand that nobody was seriously hurt, but they had to rebuild and then widen this bridge. So that's why this bridge looks like it does today. So I think that's a nice set of photographs to end on. And there you have it, a walkthrough from Stoke Bruerne up to Blisworth towards Gayton Junction. I hope you enjoyed these videos. If you do, please do like and subscribe. It helps me out enormously. In any case, I shall see you next time, and until then, have a lovely day. Goodbye.